And now I am pleased that I can introduce Regional Vice President from Tableau software company, and as well someone who belongs among the successful alumni of our faculty. He will speak about crisis decision making faster thanks to efficient data processing. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you Mr. Pavel Čejka.
Thank you very much, and hello, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon to our friends overseas. Hopefully you could see me and hear me well. Just would like to confirm that. Let me share my presentation as
Yes,
well.
we can hear you very well, loud and clear.
Great, thank you very much, Ivan. And how's the presentation? Are we good to go?
Yes, we can see the presentation. Thank you.
Fantastic. So again, hello everyone. What a privilege it is to stand here on the virtual floor of my alma mater, University of Hradec. Great to be here. My name is Pavel Čejka, and I do have the pleasure to talk to you about leading through crisis with data. When preparing for the talk today, I actually asked myself a question. What is crisis? What does it actually mean if you look at the real meaning of the word? And it comes from the old time classics, Latin, crisis, which means distinction. And when verbalized, when turned into verb, the word crisis means to make a decision. And it first started being used in medicine in the English-speaking world. And crisis was the equivalent of a tipping point. It was the deciding point where the patient either recovered or, in some unfortunate cases, moved towards the inevitable death. So, and then later on in 17th century, the crisis was used or has started being used for a significant event, a cousin, really, where after which it's irreversible and lots of changes need to happen. The ultimate outcome of crisis is transformation because it's irreversible act. So think about the current crisis. The current crisis is not only taking toll on public health, but it's causing serious economic consequences, which ex-government Duma talked about. And those macroeconomic hardships are affecting every organization, every individual, every government, regardless whether we want it or not. Our offices are empty, so are the schools. Some businesses may be shutting down, while others actually prosper out of this crisis. Just try to think, how has your life been affected by COVID-19? But what's the most important is that together we will get through this crisis, and I hope that today's presentation will give you some inspiration how we could do so. In crisis, we turn to data. Just think about it. When the first all the information about COVID-19 started, we talked about flattening the curve, and that was the visual representation of what data were telling us. We just follow up on the first presentation. We saw lots of data presented through visual graphics. This is how we actually understand the problem and how we try to tackle it. The visualization symbolizes not only pandemic, but it calls to action. So what I would like to talk today about is how we can help people to see and understand data, but it's mostly about people and the data. So if you think about the recovery after crisis, remember the crisis is a vehicle for transformation, and once it's over, we need to do things different. And I think, just this virtual conference is a really great example, isn't it, of how things are done differently. And I think that the e-learnings and all the other aspects, you're facing them every day. So let me share some of the examples how successful organizations manage to stabilize, reopen, but also continue their growth. So I'll talk a little bit about ADP that uses data combined with the COVID information to design programs to support 57,000 of their employees. TSV, a top leading company in India, created a data-driven information dashboard which helps them to address urgent medical needs of their employees really quickly. Then we get a really interesting story coming from the Ministry of Communication Technologies in Tunisia, where they use data to make sure that they could answer all the emergency calls, or the story of Mary's Bank, the credit union of United States, working with social services to make sure that they provide an total help to their applicants in the process. And then there is a story of Zillow, which I will address as well. But let's say those are sort of international cases, but let's look for inspiration to our neighbors in Poland. Poznan University actually realized one of the major needs, and it was the shortage of personal protection equipment and medical supplies during the first outbreak of COVID-19. And whilst there were many different groups offering to provide, PPE, offering to provide help, they had not been really organized. So Poznan University Business School, together with a Salesforce partner and Tableau, created ways that show a current availability of supplies and provided them to hospitals. So actually, as an outcome of addressing a need and using innovative technology, but based on a data, the around 60% of hospitals currently are taking advantage of transparent and again, ex-government Tuma talked about it, transparency, speed, leadership, information. So they can now benefit out of the quick allocation of donated PPEs. This entire thing took 5 days to build, which is just super inspirational. So how do we get through the crisis, through that chasm, through that tipping point? Speed is one of the vital things which need to be addressed here. So again, as a result, 300 care homes and 300 trained coordinators are now helping people by using data to fight this COVID spread in Poland. Really inspirational story. Now, this is a great story because it talks about that the role of government, but the need of citizens to be informed. And if you think about it, it is super important for government entities and organizations to make sure that they not only inform people, because psychologically, the crisis is really tough to handle. It brings lots of anxiety, it brings lots of uncertainty, it brings a feeling of danger. If we speak about etymology again, and we take the Chinese expression for crisis, 危机, it actually means danger machine. And how do you fight a danger more effectively than being informed? And this is the role of the government. So what is super important here is that we stand up for live reports and websites showing the impacted populations through the region. That we create a single source of truth, helping to coordinate the government efforts, and that we leverage visual analytics to quickly communicate and monitor the current state in our regions, in our countries. Why is the visual analytics really important? Well, 83% of the data you process daily is processed by our visual cortex. It's the biggest part of individual's brain, and it can actually do, it helped us historically to distinguish between friend and foe. Make sure that we run if we saw a tiger, or that we collect the strawberries. It can run really trivial mathematical operations as well. So if I just show you on my fingers, how many fingers could you see? 3 is my 4. That is not being processed by your numeric cortex. This is information coming visually. So it's super important that the government uses one source of truth to communicate to people to help them to get over the danger. Here's an example of another healthcare organization. NHS is the biggest employer here in United Kingdom, and it uses data to inform all the individuals around shielded patients. Shielded patients are the individuals who are highly vulnerable towards COVID-19. And it's important to make sure that the supplies, just a reminder, UK vaccinates around 500,000 individuals daily. Where should those vaccines be prioritized? Where the equipment should go? Well, the answer is in this dashboard. So it's super important that by showing the areas and the percentage of population by area, this helps to navigate through the places where organizations could be reopened, schools could be reopened, but where most of the medical supplies need to go. Similar is their work together with Goldman Sachs to track COVID-19 symptoms reported through the equivalent of the 911 emergency channels. This is a dashboard which needs to be reported to a government, but it's one source of truth on which Boris Johnson, his government, and everyone else make the transparent decisions. And again, the transparency was what resonated here throughout the previous lecture as well. Now, that is what government needs to do for people, but businesses are essential for quick recovery after the crisis. So when we talk about the businesses and how quickly they could recover, it is important that the HR teams quickly adapt to the safety, well, to the situation of their employees and apply safety response. They need to really quickly combine employee data around COVID-19, but also make sure that the employees are not being hit by the crisis. And the entire communication is about making sure that we provide financial assistance, pick up help to family if needs to be, flexible working hours, and other support. So here's the example of Lovelytics. So Lovelytics created a dashboard together with JSU, where they try to see how COVID cases in the US with offices can impact people. So actually really interesting here is to see that, although Florida may look okay on the dashboard, it actually has a big chunk of population which is in that critically endangered category of employees over 60 years. And that is the valuable insight which can, in the crisis, make the difference. Media. I mean, where do we learn around the crisis and response and what needs to happen else than in media? So what is really important is that media, again, delivered that homogeneous information. If you just think about it historically, PR was developed during the second, World Wars, just to provide the information to the people. And it's about a consistent message delivered across several channels and high repetition. So it's important that media uses correct data published to the general public to, again, to fight the anxiety, to make sure that we're on all the same page, and also make sure that the data you see in the telly are actually ubiquitous, that you could understand them across the board, that every single person who looks at them understand those data in a similar way. So if you look at this is super interesting, again, not from the US, but from our region of EMEA. The Ministry of Communication and Technology in Tunisia created a campaign which was about, well, if you get COVID symptoms, call, because then you can allocate the help very quickly. What they didn't realize is how overwhelming reaction this is going to trigger. So overnight, their phone call centers ended up receiving around 23,000 calls per day, which was incomparably way higher than ever before. They were receiving before around 480 calls. But the interesting finding here, based on the data, was that 60% of the calls, people calling for help, actually hang up after 30 seconds because they couldn't get the help needed quickly enough. Second thing was that there was around 20% of the callers were spam or robot calls. So the Ministry of Communication actually developed a dashboard helping their callers to track whether the call is real person in a real health situation or whether it's a robot. It also helped them to allocate people effectively. So all those people calling daily, and we said it's 23,000 people, could find the help. That wouldn't have been possible with the transformation of the technology. Last part, and I think we touched the financial services or the financial institutions a little bit in the previous section. Financial institutions across the board, across the globe, need to continue to provide their services to the people in need and organizations in need. Whether it is by allocation of fundings, whether it is, the ex-governor Tuma had a better explanation. But again, all those transactions, and it might be why ECB acted so lately, are related to risks. And so it's really important to make sure that we understand data, that the financial situation understand the data quickly and in a good quality enough so they can make decisions. They can reduce the risk and forecast what they could do. So here's the example of St. Mary Bank. St. Mary Bank provides its services to for about 100 years. It is the oldest credit union in the United States. And as a result of federally funded payment protection program, it offered small businesses suffering from the crisis. And just think about it from the context of Czech Republic. I mean, the government introduced a program which is expected to provide help to SMB or to any other businesses, but we are in a desperate need to actually execute. And that is why it's very important that the St. Mary's Bank provides that service to the receivers of the help. It wouldn't have been possible without really making sure that St. Mary understands the risk related. I mean, that the last thing you want to have as a bank in your is a huge risk in your portfolio. So with this dashboard, the branch managers, and this is super important, is also that your decision making in a crisis is not centralized, but it does have that flexibility of operation around the branches. So brand managers can see transactions on their location week over week and adjust services to really meet the customer needs. And again, if you check a little bit on the story of St. Mary Banks, I think it's one of the most successful risk reduction and help providing cases. So I was a little bit dramatic at the beginning, but it's quite true. Crises are the tipping points. The tipping points where after which the organizations and societies and people probably would not live in a similar way. But they also lead to transformation. They lead to changes, and changes is ultimately good. If you think about some of the biggest crises like Second World War, it led to technological boom. And what is really important is to act, to have the good leadership. I totally agree with the previous speaker, but it's important to let your transformation by using the data. I would like to conclude this part of the presentation by saying thank you, to the University of Hradec for actually running this Tableau, this conference, which I think has a really important topic, and that is the crisis management. I would like to thank to all of you for actually investing your time to talk about this important topic and learn a little bit more. I think it's also a good opportunity to appreciate all the frontline workers, essential workers, our nurses, doctors, firefighters, helping everyone to fight this crisis. Because again, my intention was to deliver the message that we will get over this crisis, we'll get over to it together, and we will be even more successful as part of the transformation. So thank you very much. That concludes my 20 minutes presentation, and let me invite you to ask any questions in the remaining time.
The question is about Tableau and its efforts in the Czech Republic and overall assessment how Czech government efforts and ability to communicate, use the data. So what is your opinion, and did you have any cooperation with the Czech government?
I cannot have too many comments around the government, but I can tell you where I see the successful government stories. One of them was, I mean, he's actually here in the UK, where the government uses transparent data. They consistently make decisions, communicate on those data sets. The data is not really changing. I mean, the data is one source of the truth. I mean, Churchill used to say, the only statistics I trust is the one I faked myself. And I think that it is super important that in a time of crisis, we're true to ourselves. I mean, there's no time to fabulate, change, modify, forge data so they would benefit in individual purposes. I mean, we need to listen to data, we need to learn to data, we need to talk to data, and we need to share data transparently. So I'm seeing lots of great examples coming from UK. I mean, the Mr. Tse after me is from Singapore, where I think there is also a great example of using data in finding the pandemics and using lots of innovative technologies. We created, as a company, we created a dashboard, which is called COVID-19 Hub, where there are information collected from lots of sources. I mean, there's lots of information blindness because you get so many different data sources, but we combine lots of them, which we come from World Health Organization, national banks, the World Bank, and those are transparently shared. And I think I would love to see more examples of what our Polish colleagues have done with their Help to Hospitals initiative. So I would argue we are not, as a Czech Republic, in a position to be used as the best example, if I should put it in that way.
Thank you for your comment, and please raise a hand in the MS Teams so we can see that you would like to ask a question. Yes, please. Unmute your microphone and please ask our guest.
My name is Radovan Hudak. I'm from Technical University from Košice. I would like to ask you, what do you think about filtering some data which goes to public by some media? It's maybe a sensitive question, but it's important.
It's not, that's what I mentioned. I mean, again, I don't wanna be ending up citing Churchill here, but he always used to say, "They're liars, them liars, and statisticians." And the data is not biased unless we start playing with them. And it's, the biggest difference, what I see in successful organizations or countries is how little they fake the data or filter, rather one, if I should put it in that way. Because think about it. I mean, if you create the idea of big safety by just hiding, and it's really easy, you just hide a couple of outliers, which might be the highly impacted region, or potentially, it's really easy. You don't sample properly for your analysis, and then it ends up in a skewed data. But every single data outcome could be fabulated or modified to fit the purpose. And that's not how you get successfully over the crisis. And I think it should be partially the regulatory task for the government. Say, well, here's the data source. It's curated, it's secured, it's certified, and we actually expect everyone to use it. I mean, if you could use whatever analysis, but you need to do it on a certified data source. And that's what's actually happening here in UK. So it always comes to a government, how they regulate the data, how they regulate the user cases. And I think that once the crisis is totally over, we will learn and we will see who play the unfair game. So I'm not really sure whether I answered your question. Again, let's hope that people will learn and use it as an opportunity, because having data is a great opportunity as well. We never had them before.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next question, I can see another hand up. So please unmute your microphone and share your question.
Okay, my question, if I may, since you are an expert in the field of data analysis, I wonder, because recently there were 2 new IPOs on the New York Stock Exchange, so Palantir, Snowflake. So certainly data processing and data analysis is exploding. And since I'm not an expert in the field, I just wonder what are the differences, or let's say added value of those solutions, and maybe even of your software, let's say compared to Python and its libraries. So if you could address that.
I hope we get an additional hour, Lukáš, but I'll try to be brief. The data is booming. I mean, there is over 1 million of videos on YouTube every day. We're talking about zettabytes being added to the databases every day. I mean, I don't even know how many zeros there are in a zettabyte. It actually shows I'm not a great expert on the data. Now, think about it. Economists calls the data new oil. And it's the same oil analogy, isn't it? I mean, the oil could be found, then you need to find where it is, harvest it, and turn it into something which could be useful. And what I think it's information blindness. There's so much data that no one can actually make any decisions or analysis on them, because you just do not know where to look. And let's be honest, the data analysis, the data literacy has been privilege of few. And we're transforming to a society where people need to have, and they will, the ability to see and understand data. And I talked about visual cortex. That's where most of the information is being processed by every day. So I think the successful technologies will allow not data professionals, but day-to-day users to talk to data in a very intuitive way. I mean, you don't need to write complex data models. I can give you an example. So every year I go to Kaohsiung, and the Kaohsiung Veteran Hospital, it's in a very seismically active area. So when the earthquake hits, lots of people, it's a big town, it's 5 million people. And when the earthquake hits, the Kaohsiung Veteran Hospital, which is sort of comparable to Motol, starts receiving lots of data. They come in PDF, they come in Excels, they come in calls. Just to put them together, it's crazy. and you need to start making decisions on how you allocate doctors, nurses, material, and that saves lives. The speed. Take a guess who runs and they use Tableau, so take a guess who runs the analysis after the earthquake hits. What's a head of surgery? It's a doctor, right? I mean, he's not trained in work with data, but he's using that visual analysis to allocate people very quickly, and it saves thousands of lives a year. So I think it's the easy access to data, kind of opposite what the governments are trying to do. Thank you. Very good question.
Well, thank you for addressing that, because I understand it's a very wide question. So yeah, but thank you. It's been helpful.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And because at the Faculty of Informatics, we are preparing a program that is called Data Science. So it would be just fair to ask, where do you see the future of data science? Is it really just only about neural networks? Or where do you see the most potential?
It's if you look at the Harvard run a study on what is the most important skill of graduates, regardless on the subject they study, and it's a data literacy. It's not PowerPoint presentation, soft skills anymore. No, regardless where you're gonna end up, what you're gonna study, that ability to at least, ability and willingness to look at the data, it's just super crucial. And just using the example from Gaussian, that the head surgeon, the doctor needs to look at the data every time earthquake hits. It's super crucial. So and if you look at the amount of data experts, I wouldn't even call them experts. I would call them advanced users. There's just a big difference between demand and supply, and I think it is sort of like, it is equivalent of that oil rush. We just found the oil, and there's not enough. There wasn't enough chemical engineers, and the entire industry started booming. The business intelligence industry doubles every year. So I would argue it's super important. I'm so glad to hear that the university caught up with the trend and tried to react on it. I just can totally foresee that the demand for those individuals graduating from that program is going to be way higher than supply. So I'm really happy to see that you guys reacted really quickly on that trend.
Thank you very much. Our dean would gladly hear this. We aimed at the right direction. I can see that Mr. Hudak still got his hand up. Do you have a consequent question?
No, thank you. I just left it.
Okay, no problem. The same maybe applies to Mr. or Dr. Regini. So any other questions, any other hands up that I overlooked maybe?
If not, if anyone's shy or comes up with a great, brilliant question after the keynote, find me on LinkedIn, shoot me a message. I'll be super happy to follow up afterwards. And again, big thank you to the university for organizing this super important topic. Super grateful that I was invited. And again, the data science major, it's a great move. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time, for your presentation. That ended with the light at the end of the tunnel. And dear audience, this was Mr. Pavel Čejka.